Welcome to the Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast, where you get multifamily investing made real. Learn from top players in the real estate investment world as they share their secrets with you and discover proven strategies on apartment investing that actually work. To learn more about Wheelbarrow Profits, visit jakeandgino.com, your one-stop shop for everything multifamily. Now,
hello, everybody. This is Jake Stenziano, host of Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast, here with my co-host, the multifamily mentor, the coach, the chef, the father of six, the best-selling author, the G-Daddy, Gino Barbaro. Gino, how's it going?
Stenziano, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great today, man. Fighting the power lines in the property management office here for the folks on YouTube. But we're doing what? We are making it happen, big man.
That's
so
right.
We're always making it happen. Today's guest is Brad Sumrok. Brad is an active multifamily property owner based in Dallas, Texas. He has been a principal in over 3,000 units. In 2012, he received the prestigious Paragon Award as Independent Rental Owner of the Year from the National Apartment Association. Very cool. Very cool. We like that. And in 2016 alone, Brad purchased 981 units, totaling over $90 million. So doing big things. Excited to have Brad on the show. Brad, welcome.
Hey, I'm excited to be here, guys. Thank you.
So you had a corporate background. Why don't you tell us a little about your story, how you jumped around the corporate world a little bit and finally got into the multifamily game?
Yeah, my parents taught me to study hard, get good grades, go to college, save my money, build a nest egg. My dad never finished engineering school. We had 3 years of college. So he worked for an engineer. So my parents sort of, encouraged me and brainwashed me to become an engineer so I could have a great life, So that's what I did. I studied hard. I got good grades. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Oh, another Rust Belt baby here.
Yeah. So I went to Carnegie Mellon, good school, studied hard, worked my way through college. And I became an engineer and as soon as I became an engineer, I was like, well, shoot, like nobody told me what an engineer really did for a living. So I spent the next 4 years trying to get out of engineering without getting a pay cut, because even like today, engineering is like the highest starting salary when you come out of college. So it's like, I had a car, I had an apartment, I had a girlfriend, I didn't want to get a pay cut to go into some other career. But
she wants to go to Ruth Chris on Friday nights, man. You got to support that, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of engineers. It's funny, there's a lot of engineers that get into real estate, by the way. So I guess I wasn't the only unhappy engineer. And that led me to go and get an MBA so I could, my goal was to climb the corporate ladder and make it to the C-level in a Fortune 500 company. So I went the MBA route. And after my MBA, two key things happened. One is I started making six figures, which now I can't afford to quit. It's even harder to quit your job when you're making six figures, because now you're living a six-figure lifestyle. You got a nicer car, a nicer house, more travel. But the other thing that happened is I was, working. I went from one company to another. After my MBA, I worked for 5 companies in 7 years, and I actually thought about going to law school at one point. And then I actually read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that kind of opened up a whole new, a light bulb went off in my head, and it was like, oh my God, no one ever taught me how to be a business owner, an investor, a real estate investor. So that's kind of how my mind shifted from, engineer, MBA, potentially law school, to this path, that I've been on now for 15 years called real estate investing and apartment investing.
Why did you choose apartments as your, as your strategy, as your niche?
Well, I looked at doing single family buy and holds. And one of the things I learned from, Rich Dad and other books and things that I've read was that I redefined what retirement meant, and before retirement was I'm going to work until I'm 65 or 70 and accumulate a nest egg and try to save my money and make 8% over the next 45 years of my life and pray that I die before I run out of money. And then my new definition of retirement became I want to have real investment income that meets or exceeds my job income so I could walk away from my job or be independent from my job. So I was making over $10,000 a month, after 17 years of corporate America and 2 degrees. And when I looked at single family buy and hold strategies, I calculated that I could make about $300 a month with each rental house. And I'm thinking, well, man, I need like 40 rental houses to quit my job. And I'm thinking, not that this is exactly how it is, but there's this rule of thumb that to have 40 houses, you got to look at 4,000 deals and make 400 offers to get 40 houses. And then I'm thinking, well, who's going to manage all these, especially when I have my first, second, or third house? And, do I want to be the landlord and collecting rent and getting phone calls and putting ads in the paper? And I'm thinking, hell no. So when I wanted to scale up and go a little bit bigger even from the beginning. So it just made a lot of sense to me to have economies of scale, property management, having more units under one roof. And so that's why I went into apartments.
How did you find that first deal? Let's talk about that very first deal you got into. What attracted you to it? How did you underwrite it, and how did you find it?
Well, so that's a good question. I was living in Houston, Texas, and I'm a big believer in education. So before I didn't just start looking at deals. I went to seminars on real estate. I read a lot of books. And I actually had a mentor when I started, and I believe that it's important for people to have mentors. And I still have a lot of mentors right now. And so, I was able to, learn the basics over about a 6-month period of, how to find deals and how to build credibility with brokers and how to underwrite deals. And I guess having an engineering and business and MBA background didn't really hurt. But just to be clear to your, I'm sure you guys know this, but the listeners, you don't have to have a technical background in order to do this. I mean, it's pretty simple, and I think just about anyone could learn the numbers if you apply yourself a little bit. But it took me a while. I didn't just start looking at deals and not know what I was doing. I invested in my education. I got educated. I built a team. I had experienced brokers, experienced lenders, experienced people in the industry that I surrounded myself with. And I think that's key. I don't think that's something you can do on your own. So that's how I started getting deal flow. I'd get deal flow from, lenders or brokers or management companies that knew of a property that was coming up, or a lender had a deal that a buyer had under contract and he couldn't close it because he didn't have the money and such and such. And that's how I got my first deal, was from, my team that I surrounded myself with. It was a 32-unit deal. And this was my first investment property ever. I never so much as owned a single-family rental. I just made a decision back in 2002 that I was going to be an apartment investor. So it was 32 units. I could remember it like yesterday, the numbers. It was $976,000. I was able to get an 80% loan. I got a full recourse bank loan. The interest rate back in 2002 was about 6%. I put 20% down. It was an 80% loan. And, that deal was being sold by a guy that specialized in rehab, but he didn't specialize in property management. So he bought a fixer-upper and made it all nice and pretty for me and put on, all new roofs and exterior paint and upgraded unit amenities and unit interiors. And there was even an on-site manager living on the property. So when I bought it, I just bought it and ran it. I learned the basics. I taught myself to do QuickBooks and that I managed a manager. We hired a part-time maintenance guy, and I did this while I had my full-time job.
Gino, does the story sound familiar or what?
It sounds very familiar, Jake. And I want to tell the listeners something that I think will make both of you guys laugh. I was at a party a couple weeks ago down here. There was single-family investor, realtor, a big vacation rental guy, and a multifamily guy, and myself. 5 guys.
What are you? The pink shirt dude?
I guess I'm the multifamily. I'm the other guy, right? The air conditioner shuts off. We're in Florida. It's 85 degrees. Out of the 5 guys, not one of us knew how to fix that air conditioning unit. So my wife was looking at me she's going, "Oh, you guys are in real estate?" I said, "Yeah, but we're not in that kind of real estate." So I just want the listeners to understand that you don't have to know everything when you get into your first deal. You don't have to fix everything. This is how you hire guys. Jake and I, when we first got on
the phone, right?
Well, yeah, but that's what I told her. And she was like, you guys, none of you guys? And it was a funny, these guys are like, 10, 15, 20 years they've been doing the business. So, to Brad's point.
Roll up those sleeves, bro. Get dirty. Get your hands
no
in
way.
there.
I was at a party. I was sipping some vino, bro. No, it was my house either. So just to that point, everyone's always, and a lot of our students worry about this. Well, how am I going to fix this? How am I going to do that? How am I going to know how much this costs? It's all about team building. It's all about jumping in there, getting into your first deal. Don't be afraid about it. You're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes, but course correct. And you don't have to know everything, because after 10 years we've been doing this, I still don't know how to fix an air conditioning unit. We call somebody up to do that. So, kudos to you, Brad, for that first deal. What happened after that first deal? When did you get your second deal? Was it soon after that?
It was soon after. And if I could just jump in there, because when you guys were talking, I'm just like, oh my God, like, when I speak all over the country. I'm in Austin, Texas right now, speaking to different real estate investor groups. And I just tell people, look, the only tool I know how to use is a wine bottle opener. And people, when I bought my first building, I was driving, I was in corporate America, so I had a nice little BMW car, and I bought this 32-unit apartment complex that was C-class, working class demographics. Most of the people spoke Spanish, and the manager spoke Spanish. And I'm thinking, like, I got to buy a pickup truck, when I go to this property, and I might need to haul refrigerators and appliances and stuff like that. Well, let me tell you something. I never bought a pickup truck, and I never once in my life hauled a refrigerator or a stove or fixed something. We always had a maintenance person that did that. Mm-hmm. If you think that you have to fix things, we're real estate business owners. We buy apartment businesses. Mm-hmm. And, why would I want to go out and try to do the job of a $15 an hour maintenance person? Okay.
Yes.
So I wanted to comment on that as, I buy apartment businesses.
That's a difficult concept for people to understand, because they don't separate landlording and asset management. And it was hard for us on the first one too, because we wanted to roll up our sleeves, learn, go collect the rents and knock on doors and do all that stuff. So there is a place for that and a time for that. And I guess if you're a construction guy, it can be a hindrance, because when you know too much, you know too much. You think you know too much. So you're focusing on the wrong aspects. I was in the restaurant business. I was in the kitchen. I was doing $12 an hour work also, washing dishes. That's why I couldn't grow. And I had that wrong mindset. So I think everyone on the call should stop and think about what their mindset is and what they want to focus on. Do you want to focus on fixing toilets, or do you want to focus on ultimentally growing the business? Because they're two different, completely different things
within the businesses. I mean, you're going, to laundry. So you're buying a business. A lot of times you may have a third-party management, but there's a lot of moving parts. It's quite interesting.
Definitely. Let's jump into the second deal. So what happened on that second deal?
Well, the second deal I learned about from playing Monopoly. So in Monopoly, once you buy one game, game, what do you call it? You buy one unit,
land. Yes.
One has all three of the same color, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking, I got 32 doors in my first deal, and I have a part-time manager and a part-time maintenance guy. And if I had about 60 doors, I would be able to hire these people full-time. I mean, you can do it with 32 doors, but your costs are disproportionate to your income. So when you start getting to about 60 doors, which is still my recommended size, by the way, at this point, is when you have about 60 doors, you have better economies of scale that could justify a full-time manager and a full-time maintenance guy. And so since I had 32, I started looking within like a 1 mile ring of that first property for my second deal. And so 8 months later, I was able to buy another 30 doors, like a half a mile from property number one. So now I had a 32 unit property on this block, and on the other block right next door around the street was a 30 unit property. And so now I had a full-time manager, a full-time maintenance person. They managed the 62 doors together. Life became so much easier for me. See, a lot of people think it becomes harder when you have more units, and actually doesn't. It actually becomes easier because a simple concept called economies of scale. So that was my second deal. We ran the two properties with the same staff, with one leasing office, one set of one manager, one maintenance person. And I started outsourcing the things that I used to do, like the bookkeeping and the bill paying and all that stuff, because now I was able to afford a professional manager to do those types of things for me.
How were the numbers on the second deal? Were they similar to the ones you got on the first deal?
Actually, the second deal was more of a distressed property. It was 30 units. It was $600,000. The first one was 32 units for like $970,000. And so again, a lot of people think, well, what's wrong with this property? Why is it so cheap? There must be something wrong with it. Well, what was wrong with it was simply the owner and his philosophy. And I'm looking at the property. It was the same type of property, same unit sizes, same demographics, same neighborhood, roughly same year of construction. And the rents were, $100 or $150 a month less than my first property. And so, I bought that property and we managed it the same as property number one. We did some renovations. We still got an 80% loan back then, and it was a recourse loan. And so, very quickly, that property had much more value add than property number one. Mm-hmm. And very quickly, that property became worth more than the first property within about 2 years. And ultimately, I ended up selling those two properties and made over $1 million capital gain. And that's when I quit my job, actually.
I was just going to ask, that's my next question. So, yeah, that's Jake's two favorite words for all the YouTubers out there. It's death spiral. That is a typical landlord who says, "Here's your rent. It's $500 a month. I know you should be paying $650, but I want $500. Never call me. If something breaks, you fix it yourself." And we love those landlords because they're cheap. They don't like to fix up, and sooner or later, they start losing lunas. They start cannibalizing from one apartment to the next, and we love those kind of landlords. That's what we want to buy from the mom and pops.
Yep. I was going to say, I call it the mom and popper. It's like they try to do everything themselves. When I find a property like that, that's the best type of property to buy.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, what is your underwriting, strategy? What are you looking for? Type of properties, cap rates, cash on cash returns? What are you focusing on?
Yeah, so it's been tweaked over the years, but I've been doing this for 15 years, and I think I developed a pretty good proven formula that works. First thing I look at is I only buy, generally I'm buying B and C class properties. Okay, the class A's, for people listening, is that these are the buildings that I'm in Austin, Texas, downtown, and you see all the high rises and the cranes and skyscrapers that are in any central business district, in any city USA. And that's not what I'm looking to buy. I'm looking to buy the deals that are built in the 70s and 80s, sometimes the early 90s, because you can buy these buildings for cheaper than you could build them. Okay, you can buy them for less than the replacement cost. Mm-hmm. And demographically, the people living at these properties generally range from a household income of $30,000 to $60,000 a year. So that's generally my sweet spot. Okay. Again, you just don't, the new construction and what the REITs and the institutions are buying, that's not what they're focusing on. So, we find that we can get better returns, and we try to get double-digit average annualized returns for our investors on these deals. We look for markets that are landlord and business friendly. Let's just face it. We're in a for-profit business, when we're buying apartment businesses. So I want to buy in an area, whether it's a state or a city, that is supportive of that business. For example, like I currently own in 5 different states, and I own in Texas, Colorado, Oklahoma, Florida, and Ohio. And within Texas, I own in several different markets. And all these states are in the top 10 in terms of landlord and business friendliness. And what that means for us business owners is if people don't pay the rent, it's easier to, have them legally evicted from the property. Mm-hmm. In certain states, it can take 6 to 12 months to evict people that don't pay the rent. And so I'm not going to select those states. So I look for landlord and business friendly. I look for strong economic fundamentals like job growth and population growth above the U.S. average. And I also look for, cap rates that are, near below the U.S. median. And for people that don't, there's no cap rate book. You don't have a book that says, well, what's the cap rate in Jacksonville, Florida? But a good way to think about cap rates is that everyone can relate to is if you just look at the median cost of housing and buy in areas where the cost of single family housing is near the median, like in Dallas or Atlanta or Tennessee or Columbus, Ohio. The median cost of a 322 is around $250,000 in Dallas, and that's the same as the U.S. average. But if you go to Los Angeles or San Francisco or Seattle or Miami or Washington D.C. or Boston, you're going to pay $500,000 or $600,000 in some of these places for a 322, maybe more. So that's a great indicator for a relative cap rate and a relative rate of return that you're going to get on your investments.
So how has your investment strategy changed since, I guess, 08, 09? Once we had that great recession, what have you changed? What have you done differently?
Well, the main thing I've done differently is, my underwriting has always been based on historical data. So, what that means is when I'm looking at a deal and I'm doing a 5-year projection, I'm not basing it on, like right now, we're in 2017, cap rates are near an all-time low, vacancies are near an all-time low. If I use those numbers, rent growths are near all-time highs. If I use those numbers in my forward-looking projection, then a lot of these deals are going to look really good. But if
I'm sorry.
But if I plug in numbers that are a little bit more historically based,
that's for all the brokers out there. Am I laughing? Anyways, carry on. I'm sorry to throw you off there, man.
You know what I'm talking about. But
I do.
That's what you see in most broker offering packages. Okay, and look, if you're a broker and you're listening to this, I get along with a lot of brokers, and we're dependent on brokers because that's where we get a lot of our deals.
Right.
There's a lot of brokers that are really good with, what I call realistic underwriting, but there's a lot that just, use really aggressive rent growth numbers, cap rates, and stuff like that. And when I say aggressive, they may be what's happening currently. Okay, but how many people really think that we're going to maintain a 4% vacancy rate for the next 5 years? How many people really think that the cap rates are going to stay as low as they are for the next 5 years? I mean, my personal opinion is they're not. So when I look to acquire a deal, I'm always looking at, historical data. And where do I get that data? I buy it. I buy it from, industry leaders like CoStar or, Axiometrics and places like that.
Have you bought any of the Yardi data?
Yardi is, I don't know which company. I think RealPage. I don't buy the Yardi data specifically.
I was just curious if you shopped it and compared the pricing with the CoStar. I heard it may have been a little more competitively priced, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that I look at mostly are CoStar.
Yeah. No, it's super comprehensive. Our apartments.com lady brings it in quite a bit, and I don't personally purchase it. I try to kind of get it for free, man.
Well, I buy the data nationally because I have properties in 6 different states, and so I want to be able to use that data when we're we don't want to be guessing when we're making our acquisition. So what's changed though, and you asked me what has changed over the last 5 years, is it's pretty simple. I've just done bigger deals. Okay. And here's one of the things that happens. I'm sure you guys, it happens with you too. When you get more experience, sometimes, and for the listeners, sometimes it could just be your first deal. Now the brokers become, they're calling on you. In the beginning, when you're new, you're calling every broker and you're trying to build relationships and credibility with the brokers. But once you become an owner, it's the brokers, the brokers that specialize in listings. It's their job to get to know you, because ultimately you're going to sell your property one day, and they want to sell that property for you at some point. And they also want to bring you, deals, because now you're a closer. Okay, you've closed the deal, you have a track record, and so they want to bring you deals and earn commissions, and they want to sell your deal at some point when you become, ready to sell. So it's easier to start getting deal flow once, you have that deal. And so what I've been able to do is I've been able to find better quality assets. Like I said, when I started, I was buying C-class properties that were built in the 70s. And now we're buying, B-plus assets that are built in the 90s. The one I have under contract right now is actually built, in the early 2000s. But it's actually, an underperforming asset that was completely off market. It never hit the market. Mm-hmm. It's a $30+ million property. They bring it to people that they know, can close and have a track record of closing and have a deep equity pool. So, that's the types of deals that we're doing now, is we're able to find, B class assets and get the same returns as we can in the C class.
Well, you know what happens also? I mean, you're getting more successful, and at this stage of the market cycle, I think there's more money out there, so you're able to look for bigger deals. So I guess my recommendation to the listeners out there is go bigger, because if you find a really good deal, you're going to be able to raise that money. So that the money's not the problem at this stage of the market cycle. I think the ability to find that deal is. So if you do find a deal, go bigger and focus on that deal, because the money will follow. I think that's where we are in the market right now. Let me ask you a question. Why did you get into the mentoring, training of others? What led you down that path?
Well, financially independent, and I started as an apartment investor at the age of 35, and by 38, I quit my job. And it's like, well, what am I going to do now? Real estate investing has always been a part-time activity for me because I was buying apartment businesses and using professional management. So I was never going to the property and doing everything myself. So it was always part-time. So, I mean, what's a 38-year-old guy going to do? Am I going to sit on a rocking chair and drink Coronas for the rest of my life, right? Uh-huh. So, and the thing is, I'll never forget the feeling I had when I walked in and resigned from my corporate job. I was making, $150 a year. I went in, I resigned, and my boss looked at me and said, "How could you afford to walk away?" And, they even offered me a $50,000 bonus to stay on. I slept on it, came back the next day and said, "Nope, I'm out of here." And it was just, besides meeting my wife and getting married, it was probably the best day of my life, And so, since 2006, I mean, I've helped a lot of people invest profitably in apartments, and we started our own education company. And I would rather, I actually love sharing my personal journey and motivating and inspiring others to do the same thing. It's much more fulfilling to me than actually just buying an apartment building. Tony Robbins calls it, I don't know if you guys are big Tony Robbins fans, but I am, but he talks about, the need to contribute to others. And that's become more and more of a passion in my life, is the contribution aspect to teaching and helping other people achieve their goals, while at the same time, we're still growing our portfolio as well. So I don't just teach, we still buy. I mean, we bought $90 million last year, and we have a 30 plus million that we're working on right now. So I like to say, I don't just talk the talk as a teacher, I walk the walk as an apartment investor as well. What 3 ways can they access you? That training? I'm sorry? What 3 ways can they access that training? How can they learn more about you? Yeah, so I have, I have free training. Everybody likes free, right? So I have free training that is available to everybody. And the way they can access the free training is if they go to apartmentinvestormastery.com. I know that's long, but it's all one, it's Apartment Investor Mastery with no punctuation or breaks in between. Apartmentinvestormastery.com. There's a free training tab, and it's a crash course. It's about 45 minutes. It gives you an overview of the benefits of apartment investing and why apartment investing is my preferred asset class. So that's one way people could kind of get started to see if apartment investing is for them. After that, I've actually created a home study course. It's currently being offered for less than $100. It's $97, which essentially is $100. $97. That's what the marketers tell me I should price it at. I got mentors for marketing. I'm not a salesperson, not a marketer. I'm an apartment investor, an MBA, an engineer. So if I learn how to market, I got to go have a mentor for that. So it's instead of $100, it's $97. It just sounds so much like a better deal. So. Again, you could enroll in the home study. It's about 7 hours of my content that I actually teach at my weekend trainings. But see, I only do my weekend trainings 3 times a year. I do them in March, July, and November. So the reason I created the home study course is a lot of people call me up, like right now in Austin. I'm here in Austin, Texas, and the guy goes, "Well, Brad, when's your next training?" And I said, November 4th and 5th. And he goes, "Well, I can't attend in November. So when's the next one after that?" Well, it's March 2018. And that's a long time to wait to start investing in your education. So for that people in that situation, I recommend that they just, spend the $100, the $97, and get started with my home study course. It's a lot of the content that I cover in my weekend trainings. But the best way really is if you come to the weekend training, which I do in March, July, and November. It's 16 hours. I teach the whole thing. It's 15 hours of content. Again, I'm not a salesperson. I teach. I run out of time. I run out of time every time. We get 400 people from all over the country, and the only thing that we're talking about is apartment investing. And I'm the only teacher, so it's not one of these multi-speaker pitch fests where everybody's trying to sell you their latest stuff. And that's the best way. And I have a special website for that, or an independent website for that. I mean, it's called ratretoretirement.com. And that's my personal story. I was in the corporate rat race. I retired. So it's rat race, the number 2, retirement, all together, no breaks or punctuation in between, ratretoretirement.com for people that want to consider attending my live weekend trainings.
Before we get to that,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jake.
No, I was just going to. Your story and my story is virtually identical. It's so damn close. And one thing you said really resonated with me when you're talking about going in and telling your boss you were done, and it just popped into my head because I was in sales, doing vaccine sales. We were out on the road, and I took my boss into a Taco Bell on the day that I broke up with them, and I never forget sitting down at the Taco Bell, got my chalupa. And it was the most liberating experience of my life. And the whole ride home, it was like 40 minutes, back to Knoxville that day. And I was just like, I'm effing free, man. I'm effing free. And I was out. So it was great. I loved it. So you bring back those memories, man. You're making me feel good right now.
Yeah,
so.
it's and what's really cool is like when I close on a deal, like close a $30 million deal, I'm all excited and all that type of stuff. But I'll tell you, when I have a student that was with Merrill Lynch for 29 years. And after 2 years of working with me, she quit her job, And another guy was a civil engineer for 27 years, and he's been one of my students for 5 years. He's made over $7 million, and he quit his job like 4 years ago. So, to me, that's what I get off on that. It's like I could, if you got, a lot of people ask me too, about other asset classes, and I know this didn't come up, but I don't really deviate from apartments.
Nope, we don't either.
I get presented, hey, Brad, hey, I got this great deal. It's a 40% return. You can invest in this RV park. And I'm like, you know what? To me, education and experience reduce risk. And to me, to invest in an RV park, I don't know the second thing about it. It's a completely different business.
One-trick ponies, man, and that's all we got.
Completely different underwriting model.
Yeah.
So, the way I've diversified, though, is I've invested in multiple markets, multiple states, with multiple partners. So, I'm in a bunch of deals all over the country right now. I feel like I'm pretty well diversified with my portfolio.
Well, what's really cool about your guys' story is I think the listeners should understand that this doesn't take you 10 or 15 years to do this. You don't need that much time. If you've got the education on the front end and you shorten that learning curve, the back end can be 2, 3, 5 years depending on where you are. Unless you're someone like me who has 6 kids and your food bill is a mortgage payment every month. But not many people are like that. But for the most part, you can really get out of that rat race within 3 to 5 years. I really truly believe that if you set yourself up, it's all about thinking that you can do that. And I think if you get the education and you choose apartments, single-family homes, I think it will take a little bit longer. Nothing wrong with that strategy. It's just a different strategy. But I think in apartments, if you're catching on the right, you're buying in emerging markets, you're getting your education, and you're taking your lumps, I think 3 to 5 years is not unreasonable. What do you think?
Well,
I was out in less than 3.
Yeah, I did it in 3, and I wasn't anything special. I had a degree. Just about everybody these days has a college degree.
All that is debt, man. That's the wrong kind of debt.
But see the thing with Jake though. I know Jake personally, and Jake, I wouldn't say he's extraordinary, but he's a different type of individual. He's very disciplined. He's an intelligent guy. He's a make it happen. We lost power. He got to the meeting today. A lot of people aren't like that. So I'm just saying, for the average person who has a big enough why, they can definitely do it within 3 to 5 years. I don't see them not being able to do it. Now, if you're extraordinary or you're somebody typical like you two guys, it'll take even shorter. But sometimes you need people to tell you that. Yeah,
and the other thing is when I'm sure you guys read a lot of the same things that I do, and there's a popular saying that you become similar to the 5 people you spend most of your time with. So, like when I was in the corporate world, I was spending time with corporate people, and they would talk about their commute to work, their boss, the unfair
always complaining, right? Everyone's bitching in that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or it was, hey, where are we going for lunch, or what are we doing for happy hour?
That's still you, bro.
Love to eat.
And then, they get together with their friends and they're all talking about the same stuff and their jobs and, the stock market and, politics and what Trump said on TV or whatever. And it's like, my circle, or, we're all real estate business owners. We don't really talk about what Obama or Trump or Bush did. And, we're not talking about what happened in the news, and we're not bitching about our commutes or our jobs. We're talking about our next deal. We're talking about our goals. We're talking about like the things we want to accomplish in our life, personally and professionally. And so, that's one of the things that people get too when they come to one of, Sumrok weekend trainings, is surrounded with 400 other apartment investors that, many of these people are multimillionaires, lots of accredited investors.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people just never had that experience before of being around other like-minded people.
I agree with that totally. Let me ask you, what is your best, I guess, real estate investing tip or advice for the listeners? What would you tell them? Go.
Well, I would just say, look, I would love to say apartments are the best way to make money. And for me, they have been. I mean, I do believe that apartments are the best way to achieve financial freedom. But I'll just say this. Pick something and focus on it. I decided 15 years ago to be an apartment investor. There's 30 or 100 different ways to make money in real estate. And, some people go to these multi-speaker expos, these trade shows that have, 29 different speakers for 45 minutes each, and they're all selling something. And that could be confusing to a beginner. And I would just say, pick something that resonates with you, pick something that you feel like is going to get you there, invest in your education, but don't just keep going to seminars and buying books and tapes your whole life. Like, pick something and take action and stick with it, because, there's this saying, you need 10,000 hours to become an expert. And, one of the ways to shortcut that process is and then the other thing is surround yourself with an experienced team, because, how are people, like some of my students, and I guess, you guys have education and students and stuff like that, but how are people able to come in with no experience and buy a $10 million apartment building? It's because they built a really strong team. Mm-hmm. And so you need to have a strong team, and you need to have some focus, and you need to take massive action. So the worst place to be is on the fence.
Paralysis by analysis is not going to get you anywhere. Pick a niche and hit it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm still studying. I'm still investigating. I'm still evaluating. It's like, well, look,
You just lost 5 deals.
Yeah, I went to one seminar 15 years ago. They taught me single family and multifamily, and I picked one. I picked multifamily because it just made more sense to me.
I like that. I'm with you. So, obviously, a really successful guy. This is my most favorite question to ask on the show. What is your best habit for success? Is there something you do every day or every week that separates you? This is what has really helped you out over the last 15 years.
Yeah, I would just say that, I could probably look back. I could probably, make something up. But the truth is, I think I focus on my goals a lot. I'm constantly with my wife. We're talking about, our future and what we want to achieve. And, whether it's for our investing business or our education business, I just have a really strong why about what I want in my life. And, when people say they don't know what, I don't know I don't know what I want to do, I think that's the biggest handicap, is not knowing what you want. So it's like, well, look, if you don't know what you want, how are you going to achieve it? So for me, my best habit is to get crystal clear on what you want and why you want it.
And how do you execute that?
Well, my wife and I, we talk about it. We write them down. We do things that some people might consider corny, like vision boards and things like that. But, like a great example is, when we met, met my wife 7 years ago. She was living in Florida. I was living in Dallas. And, one of our goals was to have a house on the beach. And, so we started looking at all these magazines on beach living, coastal living, whatever. And we would cut out pictures of houses that we thought we could, realistically achieve. Now, the other thing is we weren't cutting out pictures of mansions that were like 50,000 square feet. We just, we didn't think we'd be able to achieve that in a reasonable amount of time. But we were cutting out pictures.
You got $90 million last year. You might be setting your goals too small.
Things change quick,
we gotta
bro.
crank this up for Brad here, all right?
Well, that's a good point, because your goals should constantly evolve.
Right.
Like someone was like, "Well, Brad, what do you need more than $10,000 a month?" Well, look, my first goal was $10,000 a month because that's what it took me to quit my job and replace my income. But what I realized is once I had that, I wanted more, and not because I'm greedy. I wanted more, and we just donated $14,000 to a charity. I couldn't do that if I was making $10,000 a month and still maintain my lifestyle. So, we haven't just enriched our lives. We started with us, then our families, then our students, now to complete strangers. Okay, so, but we found this, going back to the house, we found this picture of a house. We made a vision board. We put it on our nightstand in a picture frame. And 2 years later, the house that we ended up buying on the beach near Clearwater, Florida, looks surprisingly similar to that house that we picked out in the magazine. And when we went and toured that property, we saw it on Realtor.com, and we went with our agent and toured that property. I told my wife, I said, look at this picture I took a year and a half ago, and check and look at this house. I said, we're going to end up owning this house. And we do. So, those kind of things, can work. I don't think they're hokey. I don't believe in just reading The Secret and sitting back and, saying Om, and visualizing things.
Woosah, baby.
It starts with visualizing and having the strong why, but then you got to take massive focused action to make it happen.
And screw the corniness, man. Proof is in the pudding, right?
Yeah.
It's not corny if you're rich, bro, right? I'd rather be corny and rich than really cool and poor. Who said that? I don't remember who said that, but it's me now, bro.
The other thing I'll just share, and there might be no right or wrong here, but I'm more of a morning person. Like I get up every day and I think about, what are the 20% of the things that I got to do today that are going to get me 80% of the results? There's so much minutia, and there's so much that you just can't do every single thing that needs to be done. And so, you got to focus on the 20% of the things that are going to get you the 80% of the results. I plan out that I focus on that every morning about what I want to achieve for the day and why. And I also learned to delegate and build a team. And
that's huge.
Yeah, in the beginning, it was team members like management companies, brokers, lenders and stuff. So they were people that were on my team, but it wasn't my specific team. And especially like in the mentoring business and the education business, which is growing and growing, and we get 400 people to each seminar. We have hundreds of students all over the country. We have a team now of 7 people. We have admin people and financial people and IT people and realtors that work with us to help our students find deals. And so you just can't do everything yourself.
I agree with that.
Totally. So because I had the make it happen mentality today, I got out of the house to make this podcast happen. I didn't bring a power cord, so we're getting down there, but I have one more question that I want to get in. You talked about Rich Dad, you talked about books. Give me 1 or 2 books that the listeners got to read that are going to have a big impact on their lives.
Well, the Rich Dad Poor Dad book is probably the all-time favorite for me that had the biggest impact on my life. I didn't sit there and go, well, the first thing I need to do is change my mindset because I have the middle class and corporate mentality. So I need to, like, I didn't say that. Like, I don't know why. Like, I just picked up the book. Like, I was very skeptical and highly educated and skeptical back then. I mean, I'm thinking, well, what am I going to, but I picked it up, and thank God I did because that book changed my life. But now looking back, the biggest thing that if you're not in that entrepreneur and investor mindset, the biggest thing is you got to change your mindset first. Okay. There's not a whole lot of books out there that I've read that are like. What do you
mean by change your mindset? Drill down a little more specifically with it.
Well, if you want to be rich, you want to think and you want to think like the rich, and you want to do things that rich people do. So, like, for example, I was taught to study hard, get good grades, go to college, save my money, diversify, accumulate a nest egg, max out in my 401k. I was taught debt was bad. Obviously, rich people and investors, we know there's good debt and difference between good debt and bad debt. And, when we bought $90 million worth of real estate last year, we have,
You paid cash for that, right?
Oh, yeah. We got $35 million in loans. But it's like now we're getting non-recourse loans. And so, we didn't even talk about that, but we're getting loans with no personal liability. So, understanding the power of debt, understanding the power of leverage, understanding the power of the difference between specialized education versus formal education. These are some of the things that I mean about mindset.
Excellent.
I like that.
Excellent. And so what is the best way for the listeners to get a hold of you?
Well, I think if they just go to, they could send me an email, and I'll just give my email out here. It's going to be brad@apartmentinvestormastery.com, and someone from me or someone from my team will respond. And then also just go to my website. And I did mention a few websites here. Our main website is the Apartment Investor Mastery website that has the free training on it. And then we also have the Rat Race to Retirement website, which is more geared toward, our live events.
Everything's going to be in the show notes, Jake. So we'll have all that stuff in the show notes. So if anyone wants to hit us up or look at it, it'll be in the show notes.
The other thing, I'm like, one of my hobbies is I love, I'm not like a social media guru, but I spend way too much time on Facebook. I'm on it all the time. My wife's like, oh, you're on Facebook. It's like, Brad, if you spend as much time talking to me as you did on Facebook. You go to Brad Sumrok on Facebook, and I also have a business page on Facebook that's called, Brad Sumrok's Apartment Investor Mastery, and I post a lot of content and things like that up there as well. So, yeah. You guys know I'm on LinkedIn, but I think Gino sent me a LinkedIn message and I responded a month later.
Dude, Gino's the king of LinkedIn, okay, man? He owns LinkedIn.
Maybe 2 months later. Yeah, maybe 2 months later. It's okay then.
I very rarely go to LinkedIn, which is something I'm not, if I were, I have a lot of room to grow in a lot of areas. So,
off the Facebook, on a LinkedIn. You don't want to hear about Hillary or Bill or you want Trump. You want to get on LinkedIn and get the serious business stuff.
All right, that sounds good.
All right, guys. Brad, thoroughly enjoyed this. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
We trust that you enjoy the Wheelbarrow Profits podcast. Visit jakeandgino.com, your one-stop shop for everything multifamily. See you next time when Jake and Gino share more of their investing secrets with you.